It's more than a coincidence. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Oh, it definitely isn't. I'm talking about the 27 Club, a notional club comprising of famous celebrities, mostly from the music industry, but not always, who died at a very young age of 27. When looked into deeper, its members total is a lot more than people think. Does this tell us something? Is something going on? Something we shouldn't really be talking about? Welcome to episode 12 in the Alternative View series, the 27 Club. What did they all not do? Some argue the 27 Club is simply a coincidence and not unusual. Studies have suggested that mortality rates for musicians are generally higher than for the general population, but no specific spike at age 27 has been confirmed. Can we and should we believe this? Simply put, no. There are far too many who have passed away at this age to not warrant a question or two. Let's delve in and take a look at why these celebrities met their maker at such a young age, and at the end, throw out there a crazy yet plausible reason for them doing so. I think you'll be gobsmacked. As with all conspiracy theories, the powers that be, the ones who don't want you to even think beyond their reasonings, will try to convince you that all is well. But sometimes not all is well, and the 27 Club is testament to this. It all kick-started back in 1969 when Brian Jones, a founding member of the British group Rolling Stones, was found by his girlfriend motionless at the bottom of his swimming pool. His girlfriend was convinced that he was still alive when they dragged him out of the pool. However, by the time the doctors arrived, it was too late, and he was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital a couple of hours later. Drowning, or death by misadventure, was determined the cause. Despite his fame and his wealth, he left us at just 27 years of age. Folk then started putting two and two together and began asking questions about why, even back then, so many musicians were dying at that exact age. A bit of an old musical based folklore then came to light. The legend goes as follows. Robert Johnson, a young man from rural Mississippi, had a huge desire to play the guitar. He was instructed to take his guitar to an infamous crossroads where locals said the devil himself would often hang out. Robert set out one night and reached the crossroads around midnight. At this exact time, he was greeted by a large being, the devil, who took his guitar from him and began to tune it. The being then played a few songs on the newly tuned guitar and eventually passed it back to Robert. Johnson, all of a sudden, became master of his guitar and could play like no other. Legend has it that Robert then popularized blues music and would go on to be famous for it. But it had come at a price. Robert Johnson, the young black man from a Mississippi plantation, had sold his soul to the devil in exchange for his musical talents. After this, what happened all becomes a bit faded and sketchy, and his death is a bit of a mystery, actually, like all folklore, I suppose. According to the legend, though, he was poisoned by an upset, jealous husband whose wife had been caught flirting with Johnson, and vice versa. Others suggest he was murdered by the townsfolk who found out that he had sold his soul 7 years previous. Religion was a must around them parts back then, and it was deemed a taboo to even mention the devil, let alone meet with him. What Johnson had done was an absolute no-no, and thus paid the ultimate price with his life. In reality, he probably died completely unsuspicious circumstances, but legends are always sketchy, so I'll leave it at that. Anyhow, more to the point, Robert Johnson was just 27 years old when he died. In the years between Robert Johnson's death and the ex-Rolling Stone man Brian Jones, more musicians had died at just 27. Mostly lesser known musicians, but nonetheless, quite a few had died at just 27. Had the music industry been cursed because of Robert Johnson's decision to meet the devil, to sell his soul? Anyhow, after Brian Jones's death had been announced to the public, several famous musicians chipped in with their well wishes. Pete Townsend of The Who, as a tribute, wrote a poem titled A Normal Day for Brian, a man who died every day. Then Jimi Hendrix dedicated a song to him on US television. And Jim Morrison of The Doors published a poem also. It is titled Ode to LA, while thinking of Brian Jones, deceased. Jones's death was recorded as drowning and then changed to death by misadventure, but some, including his son and daughter, believe Brian was murdered. They are disgusted that no authority investigated this, and to this day still haven't. Just over a year later, September 1970, Jimi Hendrix, who had dedicated a song to Brian Jones, died at his girlfriend's flat in London. Once again, details concerning Hendrix's last day and death are disputed. Monica Danneman, his girlfriend, said that they arrived at her flat at around 3 a.m. They talked until around 7 a.m. when they went to sleep. Danneman awoke around 11 a.m. and found Hendrix breathing but unconscious and unresponsive. She called for an ambulance around 15 minutes later at 11:15. It arrived promptly. Paramedics transported Hendrix to the hospital, where a doctor pronounced him dead an hour and a half later at 12:45 on September the 18th. Very similar circumstances to Brian Jones. Girlfriend finds them alive, and then not long after, at the hospital, they are pronounced dead. But ignoring circumstances, Hendrix was also 27. An autopsy concluded that Hendrix had died of asphyxia while intoxicated. He choked on his own vomit, basically. Remember I said Jim Morrison of The Doors had also dedicated a poem to the death of Brian Jones? Well, less than a year after the death of Jimi Hendrix, on the 3rd of July 1971, Jim Morrison died. Once again, and without sounding repetitive, he was found by his girlfriend, this time at approximately 6 a.m. in the bathtub of an apartment in Paris where they had rented. No autopsy was conducted despite the death being suspicious, as French law did not require one at the time. His age? Of course, 27. Now that's 3 deaths, all at 27, and all found by their girlfriends in suspicious circumstances, and all abrupt. Well, there ain't a lot there to convince me something isn't right, Beau. But hold on, bear with me. It's nowhere near over. There's so much more. It's a Saturday evening, and Janis Joplin, one of the most iconic and successful rock performers of her era, is waiting and wanting company for the evening. Her girlfriend Peggy Caserta and her boyfriend Seth Morgan were joining her for a night in. They didn't show. She was saddened by this. By the time Peggy Caserta had phoned the hotel switchboard to speak with Janis, a hotel desk clerk said he had been instructed by Joplin not to accept any calls for her. Seth Morgan had got through, but little, if anything, is known about this call. On Sunday evening, October the 4th, Janis Joplin's road manager, John Byrne Cook, found Janis dead on the floor of her hotel room. Alcohol was present in the room, but no other drugs or paraphernalia were present. It would later be admitted that evidence of narcotics was removed from the scene by a friend of Joplin and later put back after the person realised that an autopsy was going to reveal that narcotics would be in her system. Who was this friend? Have you seen my video on Michael Jackson? No, I thought not, as YouTube have decided not to promote it for some reason again, and to withhold it from most. I must have got far too close to the truth to their liking on that one too. Well, a certain person by the name of Thomas Noguchi performed the autopsy on Michael, and it was Thomas Noguchi who co-authored the findings on the removal of drugs from Janis Joplin's hotel room. You're like a Murder, She Wrote actor, Mr. Noguchi. You turn up at the most unexpected times when foul play is suspected. Very bizarre. Peggy Caserta, Joplin's girlfriend, is convinced that Janis Joplin was murdered that night, but Mr. Noguchi, who performed the autopsy, determined the death to be an overdose. Janis Joplin died on the 4th of October 1970. That's just 16 days after the death of Jimi Hendrix and 8 months before the death of Jim Morrison. And of course, yet again, Janis was just 27 years young. Just 2 weeks before the death of Jimi Hendrix on September the 3rd, 1970, yet another top musician died. His name is Alan Wilson. He was an American musician, best known as the co-founder, lead singer, and primary composer of the band Canned Heat. Remember their biggest hit, On the Road Again? Oh, He was 27 also. But don't forget, this is just a conspiracy theory according to those in the know. Try not to be so silly and suggest all these dyings at just 27 being anything but a conspiracy theory. It seems that being a talented musician with tons of potential was a tad dangerous back in the late 60s and early 70s. 27 seemed a ripe old age by the sounds of it. But these were just a selected few in this club. Let's not forget all these artists who died at just 27. Pete Ham out of Badfinger, Ron McKernan from the Grateful Dead, Chris Bell from Big Star, Rudy Lewis out of the Drifters, Joe Henderson, Malcolm Hale, Dickie Pride, Alexandra, Alistair Christian, Roger Lee Durham, Wallace Yon, David Alexander, Gary Thane, Jacob Miller, Dee Boone, Chris Austin, Pete DeFreitas out of Echo and the Bunnymen. The list goes on and on. Anyone I've missed? Tell me in the comments. I haven't even mentioned Kurt Cobain out of Nirvana, who died in suspicious circumstances. He allegedly absconded from a rehab centre, which sparked his girlfriend into hiring a private investigator after he went missing, only for an electrician contractor to find his body at his home. Didn't exactly hire Magnum then, did she? Didn't think of checking the most obvious place he could be. And I've not mentioned Amy Winehouse, whose problems were well documented and well advertised up until she sadly passed away. Who was there to help her? And yes, all passing away at 27. Now I have a theory of my own. Let me reach for my tinfoil hat. Let me know if I'm losing it. But what if, and admittedly it's a big what if, but what if all or some of these young folks were offered a deal similar to that of Robert Johnson? I said similar, I didn't say exact. What if they were offered a deal by the powers above, the powers that also control the music industry, to follow a narrative to nudge folk or nudge fans in a certain direction? I mean, these were young people with the ability to influence young people. And what if these musicians who died at 27 didn't want to follow the narrative? So let's imagine the powers above offer them this and they refuse. They have threatened with their careers as a musician, unexplainably tumbles off a cliff and their wealth and fame dwindles. They have worked hard to get where they are. They have already sacrificed a lot to get ahead. How could they refuse anything? Now imagine if they not only refuse, but threaten to go public with these offers, these agendas, these even bigger sacrifices. Now that wouldn't sit with the powers now, would it? Look at the agendas the musicians are backing nowadays. Look at what kind of people our children are looking up to and possibly following. Taylor Swift, before 27, after 27. Sam Smith, before 27, after 27. Katy Perry, before 27, after 27. Doja Cat, before 27, after 27. Madonna, before 27, after 27. Once again, the list is big. Marilyn Manson, The Weeknd, Harry Styles, Lady Gaga, even Elvis Presley dabbled in the occult, according to Priscilla. Bow tie, before 27, after 27, way after. Whether it be a political agenda that they are told to promote, or a gender identification issue they are told to put out there, or just pure wokeness, you've got to admit the music stars, the ones the kids worship, have some sort of nudge tactics under their belt. It's as if the powers above set them an agenda and they must follow, or else. At the end of the day, we all have decisions to make in life, but I find it way too coincidental that the musicians pick the wrong decisions far too many times and with little consequence. Yet when they choose to be bad, to be controversial, their careers blossom no matter how bad they get. And when I say bad, I mean in their talents also. Is this because they are told to? And if they don't, they pay the consequences? And are these consequences set at a certain age? Say 27. You be the judge. Thanks again for watching. What do you think? Is it just coincidence? My favourite band, the Eagles, seem to avoid anything nudge-worthy or too controversial in their careers. If this 27 Club exists, how did they bypass all of it? Did your favourites avoid it also? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to click the like button if you like this video, and it really helps the channel. And please subscribe, it's free, so you don't miss out on future content. Anyhow, if you're an up-and-coming musician, check your age, check your letterbox, and make the right choice before it's too late to change your mind. Take care. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.